Vinki, we got Dave on the line here. What do you want to ask him?
Just wanted to ask you, the difference is now you're raising capital, right? When you moved into multifamily. So that's the situation I am in now. So it's going to be really, really helpful for me to understand from you, your perspective on capital raise or how you did your first raise.
When it comes to the money of the deal, which should come first? My philosophy is let's get the capital lined up first, because then we can go out and we can aggressively look for deals. We can aggressively negotiate on deals. We've got our mojo. We know that we've got the money to back us.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe with Four Oaks Capital. I'm very excited for today's show again. It's another one of our Ask the Expert episodes with two amazing people here with us today. We've got a man with a ton of experience in multifamily business, Dave Dubeau, and a very energetic, aspiring investor, Vinki Loomba. So just introducing Dave, he's a real estate entrepreneur, best-selling author, speaker, and investor. He's based in British Columbia, Canada, and he began his real estate investing career in 2003, doing 18 deals in 18 months, which I hope we talk about a little bit because that seems to be quite a good clip right there. He later switched his focus to client-first rent-to-own deals, and nowadays he's into multifamily. So for the last several years, he's been a leading authority on helping mom and pop real estate investors find money partners and raise capital. So that said, Dave, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brian, great to be here. It was great having you on my show a few weeks ago. So thanks for having me on yours.
Hey, you beat me to that. I was actually just going to mention that. So actually, while we're on the subject, tell the listeners a little bit about your show, and I'll make sure we put a link to it in the comments.
Yeah, I've got a little podcast called the Property Profits Real Estate Podcast. Do not try to say that 6 times quickly. And it's all about all things real estate investing. It's not specifically all around apartments. However, we do talk with a lot of experts like yourself around multifamily as well.
Nice. And it was an absolute pleasure to be on the show. I really enjoyed it. So, thank you for hosting me. And once again, thank you for being on my show. This is awesome.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So let's do this. Let's talk a little bit about you. I mean, when I came on your show, we talked all about me. So we're just going to reverse the script. And I want to know about you, your background, your history, and, kind of lead us up to getting into apartments.
All right. Well, actually, I've been around real estate all my life. I grew up with the family home was actually a unit in a sixplex that my father and my grandfather built from scratch. So I kind of grew up around that. My mother and father, unfortunately, separated when I was fairly young. My mother became a full-time a part-time real estate investor while being a single working mom. And this was way back, raising a snot-nosed kid, yours truly, way back in the 70s and 80s. Before there were cool things like your podcast and gurus and homesteading programs and all that kind of stuff. She built up a portfolio of over 50 doors, if I recall correctly.
Wow.
Way back in the day. But you know what? I, like most kids, I wasn't paying that much attention. I was too busy having fun.
Yeah.
And went to university, graduated, traveled the world, settled down, lived in Costa Rica, of all places, for actually 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Got married, had a couple of kids, had my own business down there for a decade. Took a little crack at a few creative real estate deals down there in the late 90s, early 2000s, what would now be called pre-foreclosure deals. And then in 2003, I decided to pack my Costa Rican family up and move them to the northern hinterlands of Canada. Everybody goes, Dave, what the hell did you do that for? Everybody's trying to retire down in tropical paradise.
Canada. I mean,
I'm looking out at a
total opposite.
Snow right now. I'm looking out at a face full of snow right now. Sometimes I give my head a shake. But here's the thing: when you've been born and raised and grown up in North America, you don't realize how good we've got it until you leave, and then you understand why so many people are trying to get here, right? So I had a good life in Costa Rica. We had a good life, but being the pasty-faced white guy I am, whether you've got money or not, everybody assumes that you do, and you kind of have a target on your back.
Oh, yeah.
So it doesn't happen often, but there are things like kidnappings and being held for ransom and that sort of stuff, which doesn't happen very often in the small city that I live in British Columbia. So we moved, but I had to start all over again from scratch. I've been gone so long, I didn't have any credit rating whatsoever. I didn't have bad credit. I had zero credit. I've been self-employed for so long, I was pretty much unemployable. Hadn't been able to sell my business in Costa Rica, so I didn't have much cash. So I was kind of starting from scratch. And I don't know, Brian, Vinki, do you remember those late night infomercials? Do you remember those? How to get rich quick real estate?
Mhm.
Well, I was stressed out one night watching TV, and one of these things came across and it said, "You too can get rich in real estate with a little or no money down." And I said, "Perfect, because
Boom.
that's what I've got, little or no money." So I set away for this thing. Got this big box of I don't even know if they're DVDs. Might have been some VHS cassettes back at that time, and binders and all this stuff. And I went through it and I took massive action. That's when I did 18 deals in 18 months, which sounds impressive. But a little caveat here, you guys. Some of them were really good deals. Some of them were crappy deals. So they were not all fantastic home runs by any stretch of the imagination. But that got me into the real estate game. Caught the eye of an up-and-coming real estate guru up here in Canada, kind of the Canadian version of Robert Kiyosaki. Okay. He saw what I was, my background in marketing and my experience in real estate, and I went on board as the director of marketing for his companies, helped him grow from 2 employees and a basement office to 128 employees, 7 branch offices, and about $200 million a year in revenues and capital raised back in the day. So I did that for about six years, took a break from active real estate investing, jumped back in about 2010. And that's when I started doing these still kind of creative, but what we call tenant first or client first rent to own deals. So basically you find a really good tenant buyer. We go out house shopping for them, buy them a house, and then rent it to them or lease it to them with the option to purchase for 2 to 3 years. Typically.
But you start with a tenant instead of starting with a house and finding the tenant.
Exactly. Exactly. So a slightly different model. That's where I started raising capital. That's where I fell flat on my face. And I think Vinki, you got some questions about that. You know, how initial capital raise. So we'll wait till then. But that's when I started raising capital and learned the hard way that, you know, for me, the whole dialing for dollars, networking, schmoozing, the kind of the typical way a lot of people get started wasn't a good fit for me. So I came up with my own process, which I call 5-step money partner formula. So after that, 2013, started getting into multifamily investing, investing in apartment buildings. First kick of the can was a 54-unit building outside of Ottawa in Canada. And what I've become really a passive investor, you guys. I realized a while ago, I love real estate, but I don't love dealing with tenants and toilets. So I'd rather be on the more passive side of things and find people that are really good operators and partner up with them. So that's what I've been doing for the last several years, as well as helping other, what I call mom and pop real estate entrepreneurs get started with raising capital, because I firmly believe that most of us, if not all of us, are already sitting on between $500,000 and $1 million in capital. We just don't know about it yet. So I help people get started on their journey with raising capital and finding investors.
Yeah, a lot of stuff to unpack there. And one thing that, you know, you said early on that I really agree with is you don't understand how good you have it here in North America, you know, until you leave. I've spent a lot of time south of the border. I have not been to Costa Rica. That's one of some very few countries in Central and South America that I have not been to. But I've spent, you know, over 3 years south of our southern border here in the U.S. And I had the same experience. You know, my first time, you know, 2 years in the north of Chile. I never appreciated what I had until I was there for 6 or 8 months, and it's just like carpet. Just the idea of having carpet in a house, you know, was very foreign. And, you know, we all would talk about stupid things like, man, I can't wait till I go into a house that has carpet again, you know. But anyway, that resonated with me. A lot of things that you did. I mean, the first 18 deals, a couple home runs, a couple not home runs, probably learned a ton from those, you know, regardless of whether they're home runs or not. You know, I think everybody makes mistakes.
Probably the biggest thing I learned there, Brian, those were creative deals. So you're in and you're out, quick turn type deals, right? Biggest thing I learned was the value of long-term buy and hold, because I was in and out of those deals very, very quickly. Fast forward 15 years or whatever it's been. And I look back and you go, you know, you kick yourself, 20/20 hindsight. If I'd have held on to a few of those properties, looking at what's happened to the local real estate market, head and shoulders above what happened by just getting that quick pop of cash, which is another big reason why multifamily just resonates so much with me.
Yeah, and when you're looking for that pop, a lot of times it turns into, you have to make it repeatable. You know, you have to repeat that pop and you have to keep on doing it. As a passive investor, it's a little different. You know, if you're investing passively, you can invest, and when that pop comes, it doesn't take a whole lot just to reinvest it with another similar deal. But on the active side, you now have to repeat the pop and keep that money flow going. So
there's nothing passive about it whatsoever.
right. Syndication is an active role. But I think that the goal of most syndicators is to build the capital so you can eventually, and you mentioned Robert Kiyosaki, but if you look at his cash flow quadrant, I think the goal is for most people to get over into the B and I quadrants, the business owners, the investor quadrants, and do that. So well, that said, let's talk about your big burning why. What motivates you to do what you do, and what motivates you to be successful?
Yeah, well, you know what? That's a great question, Brian. It's the same thing that's motivated me since I started my very first business at age, whatever it was, 23, 24. And that is self-reliance, basically. I really don't like the idea of punching a clock, somebody else's clock. I don't like the idea of having a boss. So I'm not one of these guys that ever looks at wanting to retire, because I love what I do. Right? And I think, a lot of people, they've got that goal of retirement where they can kind of kick back and put their feet up. That does not appeal to me one iota.
Yeah.
Right? So that's my big burning why, is self-reliance.
Yeah, I like it. I think, self-reliance is something that needs to be emphasized a little bit more in our society. I think there's a lot more of a move towards entitlements. What are we entitled to? But, really self-reliance, if everybody moved to be self-reliant, we wouldn't have to worry about entitlements. We wouldn't have to worry about welfare programs. I mean, we do need to take care of people less fortunate, don't get me wrong, but I think the self-reliance piece is absolutely crucial to societies in general. So let's shift gears slightly a little bit here, and let's talk about one of your multifamily projects that you've done.
Yeah, so the most recent projects I've gotten involved in are a couple of small ones, actually, two sixplexes, but kind of interesting. They're in an industrial town, and these are what I would call medium-term furnished rentals. So it's not like Airbnb. These are typically we're getting folks in there, professionals in there, who are going to stay anywhere from 3 to 6 to 8 months at a time. And I'm enjoying this. Well, first of all, I'm very hands off with the whole thing. So when I'm talking about this, it's from the point of view of a passive investor. But the big benefit to this particular form of multifamily investing is the cash flow. Literally, by renting these out as furnished rentals, we are easily tripling, if not quadrupling, the average cash flow per unit by doing it this way. So I'm very excited about that. Now, unfortunately, the market that we're investing in is very oil dependent. And at the time we're recording this, we're kind of going through a little bit of a crisis there. But even in spite of that, compared to what would be going on if these were unfurnished units, night and day difference. And there's so much more flexibility what you can do with them as well.
Yeah, so you're adding to your revenue because you're putting a little. I mean, you're furnishing them, and since you're doing the 3 to 6 months, you're getting a premium on rents. So you're able to increase the cash flow. I like that. Now, where are these? You say that dependent on oil and gas. Where in the world are we looking?
Yeah, we're looking at a place called Prairie, Alberta, up here in Canada.
Okay,
that's where this is based. So,
all right, interesting.
A little bit north of where Wayne Gretzky used to play hockey.
Oh, okay, yeah. I've heard of that guy once. So
yeah,
I've heard of Alberta too. Now, my graduate thesis advisor currently works at the University of Alberta. That was his hometown. Anyway, that's definitely something that's been on my map before. But well, cool. Now, one question: you say fluctuate the oil town. What's kind of the biggest factor that determines whether or not that town does well or not? Is it the price of oil, or is there something else that's a big metric that can help you to decide?
Well, fortunately, this particular town is pretty solid. It is very tied to oil and gas up there. However, it is also a hub. So it's the biggest town in the surrounding area. And there is a bit of diversity of employment there too, not just oil and gas. However, that is the biggest driver there. But there is also a lot of construction in the area. There's a lot of agriculture in the area. There's mining in that area. There's forestry in that area as well. So it's a little bit more diverse than some of the other communities.
And if it's a town that's the biggest in the surrounding area, when people from the surrounding area go to town, that's where they're going. When they're going for their shopping events, that's where they're going. And so it gives towns like that a little more clout than their population would indicate, So, I'll be moving to a town like that in about 6 months, Idaho Falls, which is exactly that for its surrounding area. It's about 100,000, but it's the biggest city in, 50 miles. So, it attracts a lot of people from around and makes it feel like a bigger city. But
cool. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Yeah. So that said, what's next for you?
Well, Brian, I mean, for me, I am a real estate guy. I enjoy real estate. Like I say, I'm more on the passive side these days. So what really juices me up is combining real estate and marketing. So we have what I call a boutique marketing agency. We work with mom and pop real estate entrepreneurs, people that have hit the wall when it comes to self-financing their deals. They've got 1 or 2 properties under their belt. They don't know how to find investors, how to use other people's money. So we help them get started on that journey. So that's really where my day-to-day passion lies.
Yeah. And that is a really tricky issue for a lot of people. I remember when I decided to do multifamily, I had this big mental roadblock. I had a handful of single family, and I think, okay, if I cash out all of my single family, how much money is going to be left over? I looked at that amount and I said, okay, if this is my down payment, what's the largest thing I can purchase? And for me, the answer was an 8 unit, and that's what I was going to do. I mean, and I was dead set on getting a 6 to 8 unit. I started touring a bunch, and I've always heard of OPM and using other people's money, but man, I mean, that's exactly what I needed at that time. Took me a while to find it, but I eventually did. So I think that's a very crucial piece for a lot of aspiring investors, for a lot of people who are trying to, especially transition from like a single family to a multifamily. So I'm excited for that. Now, you did say, you have a book that goes over the process, and tell us a little bit about that.
I've got a book called The Money Partner Formula. And if anybody's interested in that, it goes over the 5-step formula, 5-step process. They can grab a free copy of that at investorattractionbook.com. And that walks everybody through the whole 5-step process, a little bit about my background and some other folks that have applied this and had some great success doing it as well.
All right. Awesome. Well, we're going to shift gears one more time, and we're going to introduce our next guest, Vinki Loomba. She's an IT professional and professor turned full-time real estate investor and syndicator. She's an entrepreneur and strategist with a background in commercial real estate, information technology, and academia. She strongly believes in giving back and making a difference, and is the founder of Loomba Investment Group. So that said, Vinki, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on the show. And good morning, Dave and Brian. Yeah. I'm so happy to be here with you guys today. Yeah, like you mentioned, I am IT as well as academia background. I was an IT professional for 20 plus years. And also, I teach in the California State University. I teach the master's program, MBA, of course, in IT domain, because that's my forte. I started in real estate about a year ago in multifamily, especially because I do have a strong background in commercial real estate, because I was a commercial broker in my previous life with my W-2 job. But I could not keep up the 2 jobs at one time, W-2 plus doing the brokerage. So I put my real estate career on the back burner. I thought I will come back to it someday. And that's what exactly happened. About 4 years ago, my W-2 job moved to New York. And I had the option either to move or find something else. And I was not able to find anything compatible. So I decided to take the retirement or early retirement package. And I took off and didn't want to look back at W-2 again, didn't want to go back to corporate America. So just felt tasted the freedom first time in my life after 20 plus years. And then asked my husband, okay, what should we do now? He said, let's travel. So we traveled multiple countries, came back. And then I asked him, I said, do you want me to work now? What do you want me to do? Because it's kind of retired. And just like Dave mentioned, he never wants to retire. So I never thought I will ever retire in my life, because I will work till the last breath, because that's the way I am. So I'm like, okay, what should I do with all this time now? So maybe I should start something on my own. I got my real estate license reinstated and was looking for some options what to do, because real estate is a huge area. There's multiple things that you can do.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily just selling the homes or multifamily or the story units, like so many options. At first, I was inclined towards merger and acquisitions. Again, coming from the corporate world, that's, you feel like, okay, this is what I align to. Maybe I should do that, because I went through multiple mergers during my tenure, and I completely understand the merger from the system side, but I didn't really understand from the brokerage point of view or from the business point of view. So I wanted to learn that. And I was trying to explore that option. And by the time I stumbled upon multifamily, so we started investing in multifamily as a passive investor. Now, then I started going actively. And this all happened in 1 year, last year, less than a year ago.
Nice. Now you're San Francisco Bay Area right now, correct?
Yes, I'm in
Okay.
California, in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, yes.
Yeah. So a job moving to New York, that's a substantial move. That's all the way across the country. And that's a little bit different playing grounds too. I mean, San Francisco is not the warmest place in the world, but I think it's a lot warmer than New York is right now. So
yes,
but,
it is.
yeah.
But New York is like out of the way completely, it's complete no. It was kind of a sad to see. And I think that's the other thing, when you work for somebody, or especially corporate America, and all of a sudden they tell you after so many years that, oh, your position has been eliminated.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, fine. What did I do all these years working for somebody else's dreams?
Yeah.
So it's time to work for my dreams now, maybe.
I've realized that, and it took me a long time to realize how risky the situation is of working for somebody else. There's obviously risks to working for yourself, but jobs can evaporate. Things can change, in an instant. And, if you're working a W-2 job and that's your only source of income, or, that's a extremely risky position. So, and, I like you guys, I'm never going to stop working. I still have a W-2 job right now. I will retire, later this year. And I don't plan on ever having a W-2 job again, just because of, the freedom. And I think like a lot of people who come on the show, it's the same thing. It's like, I've done it for 20 years and I can't do it anymore. So it's something that really resonated with me. I feel exactly the same. So Vinki, you've talked a little bit about your reason for doing it, but if you could just touch upon and maybe distill down your big burning why for why you're pursuing real estate right now.
Why I'm doing that, my why is very big. What happened was, when I took the retirement package, I didn't want to work anymore. I thought maybe I'm done. Asked my husband, he's like, he's fine whether I decide to work or don't work. He's okay with that. And one day, like early morning, 3:30 in the morning or something, I woke up with a very, very strong feeling that I claim to be a smart person, right? Like everybody else, that I went to school for 20 plus years and did, my MBA, my master's or whatever. And I created so many experiences over the years, whether it's in the corporate world or just being a professor. So it's all going to go waste if I don't do anything.
Yeah.
So I should be using that knowledge and experiences to give back, to create something meaningful. Because, I live my life, I would say, very wonderful life we had with my family, and very blessed to be in this place. So it's my time to give it back to the society.
Yeah.
So that's how I stepped in. So whatever money I make as a GP, I 100% donate that money back to the unfortunate people. I shouldn't even use the word unfortunate, the people who need it, who are in the survival mode. And I want to help them in some regard so that they can get out of that survival mode. Because once you get out of the survival mode, then you can think about doing something for yourself.
Yeah.
So I wanted to help those people so they have food on the table and they can think that how they can make their lives better. So that's my burning why to be here in this place.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people in the world that are in survival mode, that are looking for that next meal, they're looking for shelter and everything else. And appreciate very much that you're doing that. That's something that resonates with me as well. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. In my travels, I've seen a lot of unfortunate people, and giving back, I think is everybody's responsibility. I think most cultures have sayings regarding that, where much is given, much is required, or things like that. But very much appreciate that. And I think that speaks volumes to your character. So thanks for doing that. That said, Vinki, we got Dave on the line here. What do you want to ask him?
Oh, I have lots of questions for you, Dave.
Good.
First of all, thank you for sharing your impressive background. Seriously impressed with that. And 18 deals in 18 months. Wow. I would like to do that.
No, those were not multifamily deals, you guys. I got to be clear there.
Yeah.
These were single family home type deals, but thank you, Vinki. I'm very impressed with your background as well. Where are you from originally?
I'm from India.
Uh-huh. And how long have you been in the States for?
30 years now.
30 years now. Yeah. So I always admire people that come from different countries, come here, kick ass, take names, make a success out of themselves, because you see the opportunities that so many of us that grow up here don't. So hats off to you and your husband for everything that you've done so far.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for saying that. My partner, my husband, is the best person in this world. I think because of him, I'm here today, because he's so supportive and always helped me achieve my dreams. He never stops me doing anything. I think he's the biggest strength behind all this.
Nice.
Yeah, no, thank you. So my question for you is going back to your 18 deals in 18 months.
Mhm.
Wow. I mean, even if it's a single family, how did you do that? This was all your money, or did you borrow from your friends, family?
I didn't have any money at that time, Vinki. I had no credit, very little cash. So these were creative, no money, low money down type deals. I wasn't even working with investor partners at that time, unfortunately. And as impressive as those 18 deals in 18 months sound, I left so many good deals on the table because I didn't have the capital, because I didn't have the whole investor side of things dialed in. I wasn't even aware of it really at that time. I was doing these weird and wonky deals. I became very, very good at attracting motivated sellers to me, right? People who were in wonky situations. That particular time in this particular market, the real estate market wasn't not hot. It was kind of stagnant. So there were a lot of people, that needed to move, and perhaps they were leveraged up the hilt on their house, and they couldn't really afford to sell it through a realtor. They go negative. There are other people that had just kind of were in pre-foreclosure situations. That was quite common. There were people that, it was an estate type situation. So I got very good at finding these motivated sellers, people that had a challenge, and I could go in and solve their problem. So a lot of, when you hear people talking about doing wholesaling type deals or doing flips, that's all about finding these motivated type sellers that you can do a deal with their property.
So when you're working with this motivated sellers, and then you said you didn't have enough money, that's the tagline I'm going to use over here. So what did it feel like? Did you feel scared, or I guess there was nothing that stopped you, because that's why you did 18 deals in 18 months. I mean, what was the feeling like, or what can you tell me that what was your, I would say, motivation, or what was making you do that? Because I wanted to do something like that too, that I'm not stopping myself or creating any limitations for myself for doing that.
Well, what was my motivation? A couple of motivations, Vinki. My ex-wife was a motivator, because I brought her from Costa Rica to Canada. We were accustomed to living a pretty good lifestyle in Costa Rica, upper middle class type thing, gated community, live-in maid, gardeners, that kind of fun stuff. And then here we come back to Canada, her first experience here, and we're living in a crappy little rental on the wrong side of the tracks. There's no such things as live-in maids and gardeners. And quite frankly, Vinki, like I say, I was pretty much unemployable. The business I had in Costa Rica was a language training company. So that did not transfer to what I was doing in Canada. I wasn't going to start another language school here. I had to figure something out. And I'd looked at a couple of different job opportunities. I looked at becoming a financial planner, and actually went through all the courses and the training there, and came up to, looking at mutual funds, and when I understood them, I go, I wouldn't buy one of these things. Why the hell would I want to sell these things to people for a living? So it really was kind of it fit. It brought back memories of what my mother had been doing in real estate. She didn't do the creative wonky type stuff I was doing, but I kind of had that background of seeing about real estate. I knew it was possible. I knew other people who were doing it. I didn't see that many people doing what I wanted to do here in this particular market. And I was very attracted because I always enjoyed marketing. So I was very attracted to this whole idea of marketing and getting people coming to me, asking me to make offers on their properties, right? So that really appealed to me. So I took what I learned and I applied it very, very aggressively.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. So if I say that, like, coming from my background from India, they say that all the time. It's sometimes like a do or die kind of situation. So you are only comfortable in two situations. Either you don't have anything to lose, you go 100%, or you do not care about losing because you have enough, you do not care. And then in those situations, you're going to be successful no matter what.
Which I think at this point, you might be in that second category, right? You don't need to do this. Okay. Your back isn't against the wall. You're not going to starve to death tomorrow if you don't do a deal. So you might be in that second category.
Yeah, and that's why I bring up the big burning why every time, because that's usually what the driver is. That's usually what gets people to become successful. And if you've got that big burning why like you do, Vinki, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're in the do or die scenario. That big burning why is going to pull you through.
That's true. And then trust me, Brian, I mean, things happen automatically because you are just sitting there and seeing the magic, because it's not something that I'm working for myself or I'm stressed out all the time. I have to make this much money. It's more like, okay, it's coming. How much should I funnel it to this charity, or what should I do that? So it's totally a different mindset, you can say it. So make things a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So can I ask you another question, Dave? So you transition from this multifamily, or you're flipping the properties, that 18 properties that you bought. So how was the transition from single family to multifamily, or how did you decide that multifamily is going to be better venue for you?
Well, so I went from doing those creative deals, and I took a little bit of time off, and then I went into doing rent-own deals, which is fine. However, at the end of the day, I'm a bit of a slow learner. I realized that, even with rent-own, it's basically a slow kind of in and out kind of deal, right? So you go to all this work of finding a tenant buyer, finding the house, buying, getting investors on board, buying the property, helping the tenant buyer with their credit, doing all this stuff. And then 2 years later, you sell them the house. That's yay, congratulations, everybody's happy. But now you have to do another one, right? So it's this never ending, it's a job. Really, I created a job for myself. And at that time, I had a good friend, still a good friend, who was in the multifamily space. And I watched what he'd been doing, and I was very, very curious about that, but it was out of my comfort zone. It was out of my context. And it's funny, you guys, I said, hey, you know what? I'd like to learn about multifamily investing. And at that time I said, okay. And he said, yeah, okay. I said, well, why don't we do this? Why don't you teach me everything you know about multifamily? We'll create a course around this, because I was into the marketing side of things. We'll market that course, and we'll help other people as well learn about getting into multifamily investing. So that's how I got immersed in it, was helping this guy create this course. And we were already close friends. And I just said, you know what? Now that I understand it, that's great. That's a hell of a lot of work. Why don't I just partner with you? Why don't I partner with you and get in on some deals that way? So that's how I got started.
And I think this is a very wonderful thing, because when you wanted to learn something, is the best thing is to start teaching other people. That's how I learned, because you need to know the thing in depth. Like some of the times at college, they give me some course that I never taught before, but I take it because I feel like it's opportunity for me to learn. Because I learned that and I go back and teach, which is awesome. So asking about the multifamily, I just wanted to ask you, the difference is now you're raising capital, right? When you moved into multifamily. So that's the situation I am in now. So it's going to be really, really helpful for me to understand from you, your perspective on capital raise, or how you did your first raise. And I understand that you started some with the marketing things. That's going to be my next question once you help me understand how the capital
Oh,
raise worked the first
yeah.
time.
So my first capital raise was actually for a rent-own deal because we were buying people properties, right? So I was able to self-finance my first two properties. By that time I had enough capital and credit and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, I hit the wall, ran out of capital, ran out of credit, and that's when the perfect deal landed in my lap. And that's when I desperately started trying to raise money, right? I picked up the phone, started dialing for dollars, tried that for a while. I won't say I made hundreds of calls because that's not true. My poor little fragile ego couldn't handle it. So I made probably about a dozen calls, got rejected every single time. Said, okay, enough of that. Ran out, tried networking and schmoozing and turning every conversation into a real estate conversation. But the desperation must have just kind of oozed out of me because, again, nobody came on board. I tried emailing everybody I knew about the deal. I said, hey, enough people see this. It's such a good deal. It'll sell itself. No, it didn't. All I succeeded in doing was being like a bull in a china shop and really turning a lot of good prospective investors off. So I ended up, Vinki, I lost that deal because I didn't have my investors and the capital lined up. So that was the big slap in the face that, okay, hey, this whole capital raising thing, you kind of suck at it, Dave. You better get this dialed in, because I never wanted to be in that situation again where I had a deal on the go and I was desperately chasing after the money. That's where because I had heard that, just find a good deal and the money will find you. Have you ever heard that? Find a good deal and the money will find you.
Doesn't work.
Well, I say BS to that. I say BS to that. Unless you've already got your investors lined up, ready to go in the wings. And that became my whole goal. Okay, let's do this. When it comes to the money of the deal, which should come first? My philosophy is let's get the capital lined up first, because then we can go out and we can aggressively look for deals. We can aggressively negotiate on deals. We've got our mojo. We know that we've got the money to back us. And I tell you, when you know you've got the capital, Brian, you know this. Yeah. When you know you've got the capital, your confidence level goes way up, right?
And if the brokers know you have the capital, the brokers aren't going to be a big hurdle. Right. If the brokers don't think you have capital, they're not going to open up their pockets and give you those pocket listings that you're looking for too. So yeah, I started deal first. I made a lot of the same mistakes that you talked about, Dave, but yeah, I completely agree with you. Capital first and then find the deal.
Yeah. Now my philosophy on capital first is this, and it's going to be different for everybody. It depends on how you've got things structured, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not necessarily looking for an investor who's going to cut me a check for $100,000 and I'm going to have that sitting in my bank account waiting for a deal. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is getting investors on board who have committed to investing with me through, it could be a letter of an intent, an expression of interest, something like that. It's not legally binding. I'm not going to sue them if they change their mind, but getting them just to put their signature, their John Hancock on a piece of paper saying, I, Brian Briscoe, am ready, willing, and able to invest a sum of up to $150,000 with Dave Dubeau for a multifamily real estate deal anytime within the next 6 months. Signature, date, that to me is good. And then the other big thing is, big recommendation, big mistake I see people making, myself too, back in the day was, you raise enough money for this deal and then you stop. And then you go do this deal and then that's all good. And then you have to kick things into gear again at the end of it. So my suggestion now is you never stop with the raising capital, right? You never stop getting people lined up, ready to go. You never stop getting those expressions of interest for a couple of reasons. First of all, that way you've got the marketing going on an ongoing basis. And second of all, not everybody's going to come through, right? The other big recommendation I have for my clients is always get twice as much capital lined up as you think you're going to need, so that when the smoke clears, you've got enough when it comes time to actually do the deal. Brian, what would you say about that?
I completely agree. Always be raising is something that I learned. And at first it was It was almost by necessity because our second deal came on the heels of our first deal, and our third deal came right on the heels of our second deal. But once we closed on the third one, we had a little gap, and I realized that it took so much effort to get the capital raised for deal number one and deal number two. I'm just going to continue my capital raising efforts, and that way, when the next deal comes, we have investors lined up. And always be raising, I think, is something that is an absolute must for anybody in this business. Now we're about out of time, so I'm going to ask one of you, each one of you guys, the exact same question. Dave, you go first. How can investors learn more about you?
Awesome. Well, the best way is to go to investorattractionbook.com and give me your name and your email address. I'll give you a copy of my book, and you will be in my world, and we can connect that way.
All right. And Vinki, same question for you. How can investors learn more about you?
You can go to my website, loombainvest.com, and download a free ebook, 7 Reasons Why Real Estate Syndications Build Long-Term Wealth. And it will give you some insight. Being a passive investor, you'll get to learn something, why you should do it to begin with.
All right. And if you're listening, I'm going to have links to both of those websites in the show notes. So all you got to do is tap, swipe, tap, and you'll find exactly what you're looking for. Guys, thanks a lot for coming on the show today. I really appreciate, both of you for spending a little bit of time with us and for the value that you guys have been able to give.
Thank you very much, Brian.